former Minister Malami, Abubakar Malami, former Attorney General of the Federation, has some very, very serious charges to answer, as we all know by now. And there's also been the case of forfeiture of some of his assets, humongous assets, as a matter of fact, something about a forfeiture of properties to the tune of 212.8 billion naira temporarily. The man has actually appealed to that and has said that it was legitimately earned, and so that matter of a temporary forfeiture should be lifted. So all of that, you know, is what's on the ground. Very, very serious charges. As you know by now, Abubakar Malami is charged along with his son. Both of them, we will be looking at what brought about father and son being charged. Could it be because they are both at the same address? And there is the matter, apart from the first charge where Malami was accused directly, the former Attorney General was accused of, you know, just financing, you know, refusing to prosecute terrorism financiers whose case files had been brought to his office, and that is an offense, and he shall be arguing his case. He's pleaded not guilty to that, and the other charges where he was joined with his son, they've also pleaded not guilty to that. Those other charges relate to what the authorities are referring to as a warehousing of weaponry, you know, which is to further, so the allegation goes, a preparation to commit an act of terrorism by having these weapons in their possession. We'll be looking at that, but just to refresh your memory, in case you haven't seen the dailies, this is a roundup of the matter.
This is the second time the former AGF and his son will be arraigned at the Federal High Court, Abuja. First, they were arraigned by the EFCC on a 16-count charge of money laundering to the tune of 9 billion naira. They were granted bail by the court. Now the DSS is arraigning Mr. Malami and his son for warehousing firearms in their residence as Jess Phase 2 area, Birin Kebbi Local Government Area, Kebbi State, without lawful authority. Mr. Malami in count 1 is accused of refusing to prosecute suspected terrorism financiers whose case file were handed to him while he served as the AGF and Minister of Justice. At the commencement of proceedings, the prosecution had moved for the charges to be read to the defendants. They both pleaded not guilty. The prosecuting counsel prayed the court for a date for commencement of the trial and that the defendants be remanded in the custody of the DSS pending further proceedings. Counsel to the defendants, on the other hand, informed the court that his client has been in the custody of the DSS for over 2 weeks and was brought to the court directly from the hospital. He craved the indulgence of the court to move an oral application for their release. Justice Joyce Abdulmalik in the short ruling held that the court is a court of record and as such the defendants should file a formal application before the court and serve the same on the prosecuting counsel. She therefore remanded the defendants in the custody of the DSS and adjourned until 20th February for hearing. Celestina Iria, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, our thanks to Celestina. That report went out earlier. We shall be joined shortly by a legal practitioner in the person of Malaki Ugumadu. He's a constitutional lawyer, and we'll be looking at the seriousness of these charges. And, well, as we all know, in law, all of these are charges, and indeed, the defendants have pleaded not guilty. But we'll see how it all goes. They're pretty serious charges. And I was just curious. Maybe I'll be asking Malaki Ugumadu when he does get here, the oral application for bail matter. Why was that? I mean, he's a lawyer, he knows, but the judge had to sort of say that, look, this is a court of record, and so there must be records. I won't be able to deal with an application, an oral application for bail. See if you can put it into the proper form, and then we'll take it from there. But in the meantime, they have been remanded into the custody of the DSS. The question, and actually, pending when Malaki gets here, I guess we can open the phones, because this is a long-standing story. It's been coming for quite a while, and so there might be, might be lawyers, it might just be people who are deeply interested in the matters. You might have some commentary before the lawyer comes on. We'll open the phones, and you can call in on that. But the question of, I wonder what the lawyers will make of the charge that Abubakar Malami, the Attorney General at the time, files were laid on his desk, and it was supposed to be about knowing who financiers are, terrorism financiers are, and that the charge is that he refused to actually sign these matters, not to sign them, to take them up and prosecute them. Of course, people will be interested to know why that happened. And okay, let me take Mr. George, who has called in from Ikeja. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yuri. The phones are a bit difficult these days.
Oh dear.
But I'm happy I've gotten through this morning.
Yes.
I have been seeing the scenario everywhere about the former Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
I also read his response to the charges of forfeiting
yes.
properties that he was alleged to have acquired illegally. Even though I'm not a lawyer,
mm-hmm.
I don't have to be a lawyer to use my common sense. He brought figures. He's been charged for an amount that is questionable in the region of 220 billion naira.
Okay, 212.8 billion. But close enough.
And he came up with a defense to say that it is his money, but he can only justify about 9.8 billion naira out of it. Does that not already give a verdict on the case? If what you have been found with is in the region of over 200 billion, and you are saying that you can only justify 10 billion or so out of it, you have already passed judgment on yourself. You recall that this minister, this former Attorney General, was very powerful in government. And the EFCC was one institution, one parastatal under his ministry. Mangu then was the executive chairman of EFCC. This man made life difficult for Mangu. Mangu was the face of anti-corruption fight of President Buhari, because we didn't see any of his ministers or lieutenants that were championing anti-corruption fight. But Mangu was the face of it. This man made sure Mangu did not have freedom to do what he wanted to do until he succeeded in installing his own stool that played his game for him. The lesson that this one should teach is that power is transient.
Mm.
And that when you're in a position of authority, you will be called to question either now or later. There is nothing you do in this life that the consequence does not come. For him now to have all these charges, it even goes beyond finance. He's being charged for terrorism financing. Arms and ammunition were found in his house in quantities that is not expected of a civilian. And the caliber of the arms are not what, even if he was qualified to hold arms, he is not qualified to. A general in the army is not even entitled to keep such arms and that quantity of arms in his house.
Well,
so
indeed.
Where do we go from here?
Okay.
A man that was the Attorney General of a country with 230 million people. It's a shame.
Okay, Mr. George.
I dare say.
Thank you very much for calling in, but we'll just remember that all of these are allegations, they are charges, and the man and his son, for that matter, have pleaded not guilty. This is the form. This is the form of the law. So, you know, even some of the things that, you know, you brought up earlier, well, like these are also in the realm of allegations, but because this is a very, very serious matter, so we're going to be on our, at least from this side here, we're going to be, Mazi Okoroafo is in the house.
Yeah,
okay.
Good morning, Sayuri.
Good morning, Mazi.
You see, Sayuri, what we are seeing on television now, it looks one kind something like as a drama. Now, to tell somebody out of terrorism, is it not supposed to be on the handcuff? But you see how gloriously that they are working. But the question is this. All those charges, all those things they saw, what does it take the security agency to display all those things for Nigeria to show that Nigeria will know exactly this is the true story of what we are saying? Because I can't imagine myself, former Justice Minister, to be involved in this type of act. And we are just taking
allegedly.
What happens to
Allegedly, sir.
We are making the whole thing terrorism and system. I don't blame people that when Trump says terrorism in Nigeria have been perpetrated by the elite. And this one is a true story that we are going to see. Now look at the catcher the DSS discovered. Now what are we saying? Now can they explain to us one by one, all those catchers?
Okay.
From where?
Thank you very much, Mazi.
I like American people. When they trace anything, they will not go back to the country where those items were just imported from and start tracing the manufacturers and who exported those things, who brought those into Nigeria. That is because terrorism is something that we don't take it as a gift because Nigeria is being faced with a serious terrorism. Thank God for Trump, for our president, for that collaboration with the American government. Because we have to make sure that all these acts of terrorism that is destroying this country economically, politically. Now look at Kogi State now. They have closed school because of terrorism. Now look at education is one of the key factors. One of the dividends of the middle class. Tell me, what is the fate of those things? Look at Niger State.
Okay. Mazi.
We must take terrorism and act of terrorism. And the case of that is not.
Please stay online.
Good morning,
Thank you very much, Mazi Okoroafo, for calling in. I hasten to add again that we've been around lawyers long enough to know that these are allegations, and they have been able to plead, and they have pleaded not guilty. So that's the nature of the law, and that's indeed what we shall be following scrupulously here. And I'm very happy, in fact, that our guest this morning, Malaki Ugumadu, in my mind, I always want to add 3 initials after that name every time I say it. But it is well for now. Good morning, Malaki, constitutional lawyer. Thank you, as always, for coming. And I seize the opportunity to say a Happy New Year. This is the first time we're seeing.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
Indeed.
Happy New Year to the viewers.
Indeed.
Except to observe almost immediately that you're looking a new look. There's a new look on your face, and I'm sure the viewers have taken note of that.
They've taken due note, as you lawyers say, from time to time. But thank you very much for coming on. I was just making the point, perhaps needless point, that this is a very, very serious case here. We're talking here about being charged with a refusal to finance, a refusal to prosecute financiers of terrorism when the files had been laid on his desk in the first instance. And all the other charges, apart from the one that concerns the property that somebody has spoken about, all the other charges concern firearms, stockpiling. In fact, I think they even use the word warehousing. Maybe we'll come to talk about that, because when I hear warehousing, I think of a very big facility where things are stockpiled, but maybe there's a legal definition of warehousing. But let's first of all take it from the very seriousness of these charges, and these charges being laid at the feet of a former chief legal officer of the country.
Well, again, thank you for having me. And
pleasure.
Good morning to your vast viewers around the world. I'm glad that this topic is in the front burner, at least for you at TVC. I'm also very cautious this morning, realizing that those charges are before a court at the moment. In other words, the matter is sub judice. However, I will deal with the general story and the principles around it as it affects the Nigerian public and our polity. Because this is also no ordinary person. He was, yes, the former chief law officer. That's your word, and that's very correct if you are referencing section 150 of the Constitution. It describes him, in fact, any Attorney General, as the chief legal officer, law officer of the Federation. There are not many such public servants that are so designated in the Constitution, not in status, law books, but in the Constitution. So to that extent, it's of public interest. Now, what are the issues? You recall?
Well, sir, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, because as we were speaking, Tony also came in. But we're going to hold the calls now that Barrister Ugumadu is in the house. But in the meantime, since we did invite calls to start off with, good morning, Tony, in the UK. Tony, can you hear us in the UK?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank you very much for calling in. Please go ahead. You're the last of the calls that came in preliminarily.
My concern ever is that, hello, can you hear me?
Very well, very well.
Yes, my concern ever is that Nigeria, since they started convicting and getting people who were there just against corruption and all that, I have never, or who can ever tell me the person who has, somebody whom they have, convicted for any offense like this or corruption, they are fighting against it. Anybody they accuse, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, the case will be over. Somebody like Yaya Bello, when they accused him, they were, thinking, oh, this, that. Before 2 minutes, everything was over. Who can ever tell me the person they have convicted? Everybody that eats Nigerian money, 2 minutes, the person will be free.
All right, Tony, thank you very much for calling in. And I'm sure, my guest, Barrister Ugumadu, has noted that point, and somewhere along the line, he will comment on that aspect. Please continue.
Thank you. So
we're going to hold the calls so that, we can hear our guest.
So I had made the point that this is one of the high-profile cases that the Nigerian law enforcement agencies have been able to institute. In the first instance, relating and concerning the same defendant, it was financial crimes, amounting to about 8.7 billion naira. This has to do with terrorism charges. All of them are allegations that has graduated to charges now because they've been filed before a competent court of law.
Okay.
Has it been proved? No. That will happen after due processes, proper prosecution, where he also will have the opportunity to defend himself. They will lead, prosecution will lead their witness in chief. He will have the opportunity to cross-examine them. He will open his defense. They will be cross-examined, and all the fireworks, including the final written addresses, before the court will have the opportunity to pass judgment. Thereafter, sentences will occur if he's found guilty. That's the standard. And he should know, because for 8 years, I imagine, he was the chief law officer of the country. Now, I think we should give credence to both the EFCC in the first instance and now the DSS in the second instance, for at least coming to the point where they feel sufficiently convinced that there is a prima facie case against this man.
Okay.
Because no country proceeds with this caliber of defendant without, first of all, getting convinced as a prosecution team that there is a case that exists out there. Because you make a fool of yourself and then turn the whole thing into a mockery if you are not, at least within the thresholds of your operation, convinced that this is a case worth pursuing. And I think that in many respects, that can resonate the confidence of the people of the country who have, to a large extent, lost confidence in the whole process. It also sends a signal that we have come to the stage where even high-profile state actors, you know, people who were in government, people who, you know, were in the corridors of power, could be arraigned before a court of law. I imagine that what the Nigerian people want to see is proper conviction and let them serve their prison terms, as the case may be. Now, but it will follow the due processes just so that we don't also rush to conclusion when somebody may otherwise be innocent. It were better that 9 guilty people escape justice than 1 innocent person is implicated wrongly. That is the philosophy of the law. But I think that this is a case that will galvanize the interest and attention of the Nigerian people, because it is not too long a time, just a few years ago, less than a decade or thereabout, this man superintended the affairs of the Ministry of Justice like a colossus. And some of us who are lawyers were not satisfied. In fact, the way he conducted himself cast aspersion at the quality of what we do as legal practitioners. And I had so many occasions to mention it. Never mind that he's holding the short end of the stick now. But I'm sure that we don't all suffer that institutional memory that makes us forget many of the cases that were brought before the ministry, and many that ought to attract his attention, many bordering on the security of this country, and we didn't see anything. Now, if you look at section 174 of the Constitution, it talks first about initiating. You know, people reference, oh, he can enter a nolle prosecution. No, that's not the first thing. The first thing section 174 is concerned about is to institute and take over. In fact, as the leader, or as one who was in the leadership of the Committee for Defense of Human Rights, I was the General Secretary then, we had cause to query his predecessor, the Attorney General of this country. And the cardinal point of our contention is that we were able to assemble so many cases that were withdrawn from court by way of nolle prosecution, many of which were known cases that needed to be dealt with in a way that puts an end to the madness that had befallen the country then. And of course, you know that that particular Attorney General was deranked on account of that. We did it at the CDHR.
That now, is Committee for Defense
correct.
of Human Rights.
Yes, on record. So when you now hear that part of the charge is his refusal to prosecute terrorism cases, terrorism financing, many of which were documented and brought to his table, my mind goes back to the same section 174 that does not grant the Attorney General the power of nolle prosecution. Nolle prosecution is to withdraw from court an existing case. Okay. It's not a case of refusing to. Okay. In short, the case must have been existing.
So there's a difference in that regard.
There's a difference.
Because I was going to ask you about that. The wording of the charge is that you, Abubakar Malami, did knowingly abet terrorism financing by refusing to prosecute terrorism financiers whose case files were actually brought to your office as the Attorney General.
So in the wisdom of the prosecution, they see elements of that crime in his behavior. When you refuse,
he was not at liberty to conduct himself like that, because by refusing to prosecute terrorism financiers.
That in the wisdom of the prosecution is abating. If you refuse to, you are abating.
Okay.
That is my understanding of it. And I was making that big point that you cannot hide under Section 174 because Section 174 actually charges you. Please, let them, it says, can take over or continue. It says he can withdraw an already instituted. So in all cases, it is believed that you must perpetually, once you are convinced that there are prima facie cases, put these cases in court.
Yes.
Because it is not for nothing that we wish that these cases go to court. Nigerians have come to the stage in this country where they would have wished that it is jungle justice. But an agency of government is properly resourced, properly funded to be able to take away that violent tendency, jungle justice attitude, away from the masses who are the victims of, poor governance, so to speak, to now have them institute this matter before the due process of the law. Where you therefore fail to do that, and there are evidence, sufficient one at that would have enabled you with unfettered powers to save Nigeria, at least let the world through the court know what has happened. Never mind that you didn't win or that the defense was so sophisticated that they escaped. But do your work. So if there are multiple cases of such refusal, I think in the wisdom of the prosecution, they felt that is abating. That's where we are.
How can you help us understand? He was alone in this particular charge of, because his son is not a lawyer, at least at that level, even if he is a lawyer. But
it's not just a lawyer; it's a senior advocate.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
So was his predecessor.
So that's why that's count 1 was for him alone.
Yes.
But then when you move on to count 2, 3, 4, and 5, then his son Abdulaziz, his name is now Abdulaziz Abubakar Malami, both of them now did engage in conduct preparing to commit acts of terrorism by having in their possession and without license a Storm gun, a Storm Magnum 170101 firearm, and then they proceed to talk about the bullets and all of that. Why was his son also charged? On the face of it, one could say that because the son also had something to do with it, but I wonder if the fact that they were living together at the same place, and this was where these weaponry were discovered, if that is part of what brought his son into it. And I don't even know if his wife at one time was involved in all of this, and then later on we didn't hear about her anymore.
No, I believe the wife's aspect of it was the financial crime aspect of it, which preceded this one. But here is the point. I imagine, and to be fair, I haven't seen the body of evidence that the prosecution has gathered. But I imagine that the son must have been thoroughly investigated. Don't forget, these were investigations conducted by the secret police, the DSS and co. And if, for instance, and this is assuming without conceding, that the son may have been cited as the owner of one or some of those guns. The offense would be that he owned these weapons without license. Because that would have changed the whole
because all those charges brought the words without license, without license.
If you are licensed to bear arms, it becomes a legitimate acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
But where you owe them and have them without license, that becomes
You're going to have
problem.
to explain that.
So we will see how it will all unfold. It's not a panic mood. The only thing is that these are public officers who ought to know, who superintended the affairs of a very sensitive aspect of our polity in this country, just in recent times.
Okay.
And the country is reeling badly under the weight of this trend of violent behavior.
Okay.
And therefore, any person who is involved should have his day in court.
Indeed.
But that doesn't make them guilty, at least as of today.
All right, then. And we'll have to take a break now. But let me also say that by the time we come back, there will be coverage of what Southeast Development Commission, Office of the Vice President and State Governors to hold a Vision 2050 Stakeholders Forum, which I think you can see pictures from there now. We'll continue with this conversation when we get back, and our viewers know that you can continue to watch our main discussion. You can continue to watch that on our YouTube channels, and for those of our viewers in diaspora, nothing changes. You continue to see the program. Do please stay with us. We'll be right back. General, former, because it was in the previous regime, the regime of President the late President Muhammadu Buhari, and you know, surprisingly to a lot of Nigerians, here his return is, you know, to answer grievous charges about abetting terrorism financing, and then subsequently, after that, our guest is Malaki Ugumadu. After that, we've been hearing that, you know, he and his son have also been charged separately with stockpiling arms and ammunition to, you know, probably carry out something that is entirely against the laws. There must be a reason for the counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, all of them which are on this equipment. We're looking here at the stun gun and then ammunition. Why all those weren't put into one charge? Why they had to be broken up? Is this procedural formality of the law?
No, not formality, procedure.
Okay.
Largely because each charge has its own parameters, has its own ingredients,
Okay.
which must be proved beyond every reasonable doubt. When you lump them together, you run the risk of also making the mistake of satisfying the standards of the law in respect of each of those charges.
Okay, so they go about it, the way the law has to go about it is that when it says, for instance, just looking at the first
Yes.
of these charges, that you, Abubakar Malami, and Abdulaziz Abubakar Malami, the first time the son's name appears, did engage in conduct in preparation to commit an act of terrorism by having in your possession and without license a Stern Magnum 17-0101 firearm, 16 Red Star AAA 5 degrees 20 live rounds of cartridges, and 27 expended Red Star AAA 5.20 cartridges, and thereby committed an offense contrary to and punishable under Section 29 of Terrorism Prevention and Prosecution Act of Prohibition Act of 2022. Now, all the other ones also have those details.
Yes.
They have those.
Yes, but if you read closely, you
Yes.
will find that there are elements of those subsequent ones that require separate standards of proof.
Okay.
You may think they are the same, but a word must have been introduced there, either trying to satisfy just conspiracy or the main act of it. So you read through, if you are not discerning enough or you're not trained, you think it's exactly
you think
the same
that
thing.
they are
No,
not.
they are not.
They are not.
Otherwise, you would imagine why somebody who had just left the same federal high court, less than a fortnight, is charged with yet another. You can't lump them together. They are different and have different ingredients, elements that constitute that offense.
You're very, very right.
It is those elements that must be proved before reasonable doubt, before you can talk of conviction.
So it's like,
And mark you, if there are any shadow of doubt relating to those offenses, it will be resolved in favor of the defendants.
I see.
And this is why the prosecution usually take their time, do their discrete investigation and background checks it is for nothing that they are saying you owe this, and they must have come to the conclusion that you actually acquired these weapons.
Indeed.
And then gone through the regulatory bodies or the agencies where you ought to have obtained licenses to find that you have the license or you don't find the license before the charges are preferred.
Indeed.
So it's a very rigorous process.
So indeed, I can see how rigorous it is from what you've just said. And the first charge that I scanned through was under Section 29 of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022. But the one that follows is saying something firearm and thereby committed an offense contrary to Section 3 of Firearms Act of 2004 and punishable under Section 27 of the same act. So there will be these. You
can see 2004, 2022.
Yes.
You may not see those things until you read it. And as a prosecution, look, I have said repeatedly that it is easier to defend a criminal offense than to prosecute it.
Okay.
Because of the standard of proof. So where you don't pay very detailed attention to all the details and be able to conclusively, in short, ineluctably, bring the judge to believe their own side of the story, it will be resolved in favor of the defendant.
I see.
And that is where they say, these people have come again.
So people can't be too careful about these matters. At this stage, we're joined by Ada in Jos. Good morning, Ada.
Yes, so Ada, calling from Jos Plateau State. Good morning.
Thank you for calling.
It's not even about Malami, the ex-Attorney General or whatever, My concern is we have a systemic problem. We have very weak institutions. When he was in office and those names of the financiers, the terrorism financiers were brought to him and he refused to prosecute them, what happened? Did anybody ask questions? I don't know the kind of constitution we have or the kind of democracy we are running. That is why anybody who gets there, even you and I don't know how we will behave. The kind of weak institutions we have in Nigeria can make even an angel to be, put himself in trouble in terms of fraudulent acts. Other countries, it's the institutions that check them, the National Assembly and the rest of them. But then, what do we have here? It's really unfortunate. After some time, I'm not even excited about the whole issue because after some time, it's a 9 days wonder. After a while, you will not hear. That was what the guy from UK was talking about.
Indeed.
After a while, you will hear it. Everybody, it will be before you know it, they will start adjoining. The next 10 years, the case is still on. It's really unfortunate. I wish for this country.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Give up on Nigeria. It will get better.
Thank you very much for calling in.
That's a very important point from Ada. And I'm happy that she re-echoed it. And that goes to that point about the confidence of the people in the system. I have repeatedly again said that the notion of justice does not disappear when you win or lose a case. It evaporates when that confidence of the people is shaken. But the reason I think that Ada's admonition must be taken seriously is that if you listen to the Chief of Defense Staff now, the recently appointed, he did mention it in one of his recent interviews that I monitored, where he said that there are institutional challenges because on their parts, for instance, they are able to take on most of these criminals and then, as expected, submit them to the process where the institutions are supposed to take its course. But they get completely discouraged when they see that it's not exactly what they have suffered, laid out their lives for, suffered the limbs and the arms, and sometimes many paid the supreme price, only to hear that nothing happened. So I agree with Ada that after
Anthony before her.
Even George
also brought that matter up.
So, because we can go on and on to mention cases that are unconcluded, that are unable to be conclusively determined in this country, that now cast serious aspersion. It's not only Malami under General Buhari's. Remember, there's a case against former aviation minister.
Yes.
Sariki Hadi also. We can't hear much about
nothing more. I'm going to come back and ask you what your thoughts are as to why we have these unconcluded cases. But Mr. Joshua, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Okay, Ogliori, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm happy to connect to you this morning. Happy New Year to you.
Indeed, the same to you. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you.
And I greet your guest.
Thank you, sir.
For me, it's just to greet you, but just to put mouth in what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good that the chief law officer, the former one, is being tried. It sends a good signal to everyone that there are no sacred cows.
Okay.
And anyone that defrauds this nation will eventually be tried. Unfortunately for me, I still think that our way out of all this is to prevent corruption rather than all these high-profile trials and all these things costing the state taxpayers' money being spent here and there. And at the end of the day, this is a chief law officer, for example. If you don't have a watertight case against him, he can escape. All the money is wasted. The point for me that I would take from this, I hope they get a good outcome in court. But the point for me is this. His association with, or he's been allegedly associated with terror in terms of what is going on in the North.
Terrorism,
I think through your platform and everywhere, we should send a strong message to the North. If they want to stop terrorism, they will stop it. It is sad that they know, obviously now we know that they know the characters that are involved in these terrorist activities. And they are, negotiating with them, talking with them and all these things. The non-kinetic approach is not working. So just go all out, take care of these guys, and let's have some peace. That's just it for me. And then the northern elders or leaders should help Nigeria so that we can have peace for the sake of everyone.
Thank you very much.
I thank you and I appreciate your guest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joshua. And by the way, you could see the defendant, the main one there, former AGF Malami, smiles, you know. In fact, if he was coming to receive an award, he couldn't have appeared any differently. It seemed like he was proud, seemed to be waving to some people. So I wonder if all of that is pointing to the, seriousness with which he's taking the charge.
In fairness to Abubakar Malami, SAN, his sense of, his aesthetic values are high.
Okay.
He has a sense of dress or dressing. But it ends,
as befitting an AGF.
Yeah, it ends there. I've had cause to query very many other aspects of him while he was in office regarding his. But the real point about that is that the Constitution, as well as the Extant Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which essentially regulates the procedures adopted in the prosecution of criminal matters at federal level, absolves them at this stage from any guilt.
Okay. And he has pleaded not guilty anyhow.
Correct. Their fundamental right to innocence is still in their favor at this stage.
And so that's probably what he was subconsciously demonstrating in all of that. But I'm not worried. I'm not guilty.
In terms of there's so much you do when you are contrite, when you do not deflect and give the impression as if this is a joke and this is happening in a very flawed society, because that's what he communicates. Well, there is nothing in his sense of dressing that shows that he's contrite, perhaps because he believes he's innocent. I give that to him.
Perhaps.
But anyone who was in this position that he once held, that has such a grievous criminal allegations,
it should show.
It should show
in his mien. It should be.
I've never seen him in this. I've observed him for so many years, and I can tell that he dresses well, just like many people.
Totally.
But I've never seen him in this kind of flowing.
Totally.
And that also casts aspersion at what we do in these correctional centers, where he didn't come from the house. I don't think so.
No. I don't.
That returns so much.
And this reminds me of...
he's still innocent. I'm very sensitive to the rights of even prisoners.
And
even as a convicted person, you cannot do certain things if it is not part of what is contained in. But this is not what you tell a nation.
It hardly is. So all of these things are psychological.
And
I think he's
not
acting
limited,
out,
yes,
not guilty.
Yeah, exactly.
He's acting out,
it's not limited
guilty.
to Malami.
That's
it is
the point I wanted to
applicable
make.
to all political gladiators, all state actors.
Look at the former CBN governor Emefiele, for instance. His presentation was different. Yes. He was carrying a holy book, as a matter of fact. And
not knowing what the verdict will be. But there's a sense in which you are giving the impression that...
The question that Ada, George, and Tony in the UK had brought up about... But we've seen before that after all... In fact, one of my senior friends has said that after all this gra-gra, this matter will just die down.
It's good to hear that you have senior friends. So some of us see you as a veteran and the height of... But on a serious note, and that should worry everyone, because we're staying so long on this pact where so much noise is made, too much air is built around a particular situation, and before you know it, you don't hear anything about it again.
Anymore.
Let alone having on record that there have been a conclusion on those cases. What it does is that it attacks the mentality of the people who are watching. And it also questions the capacity of the state to rein in and effectively deal with. For instance, I think it was Joshua, the last caller.
Yes.
He said, for that reason, let us therefore de-emphasize these high-profile cases and move more constructively at the provenance of these corruption cases, for instance. In other words, how do we check the occurrence of these corruption cases and invest heavily in checking it, rather than allowing it happen and think that the best way to go about it is to begin to assemble all the senior advocates in the country and then dramatize the fireworks that goes along with it.
Okay, I think we just lost a call. I was listening for that. But for all of that, these are different times. And that things are not going to be as they have been. Well, that remains to be seen. That's a work in progress, and it remains to be seen. But we can't afford for the people to get jaundiced about such important matters like this, and that there is evidence of that. Ada said it. She said, "I'm not excited."
Cynical.
Yes, I'm not excited. So I imagine that the lordships who are in charge of this case are also taking due note of this attitude of the public.
Of course, it's the perception. It's the perception. There's a course we do as law students, law research scholars. It's called jurisprudence. It's the science of the law. It is why the law is the way it is. And what I have just said about the perception of the ordinary, not you and I, who are, no, the ordinary man on the street who has no expertise. You must be concerned about how he feels, his understanding and perception of that justice, just rule of law. And why if he has it at a very low ebb in assessment, you've lost it. Even if you come out with judgment, he believes there's no justice. And especially so it's good to have these highfalutin words around what we're doing, hoping against hope, there's reforms and all that. But that will not displace the perception of the people if they don't see very dramatic change and very fundamental shift from where they are. I.e., you say it's a new era. Apart from Malami, in recent times, where is it? Where are the prosecutions? Are we saying that it was all well and good with the Muhammadu Buhari administration, even this one, where we found ourselves? So you can only do it if you demonstrate, in fact, dramatize that there are enough valve and disposition to turn around the state of affairs in relation to corruption or terrorism charges. And you will be able to showcase what has happened, track it, and we all see the conclusions of it, and those serving out the punishment. Because we see killings, they are not killings by spirits, they are killings by human beings, many of whom have been arrested. The chief of defense staff coming out to say that they do their work, the Inspector General Police, but nothing happens at the end of the day.
So all eyes are going to be focused on this case,
yes,
especially as we're talking about humongous sums that most Nigerians, you know, can't just really relate with
yes,
and imagine. I mean, too many Nigerians can't relate with figures in their millions, and we're talking here about billions. And we hear that in that case, separate case of, you know, forfeiting 212 billion naira, he's saying that, unlock that temporary thing you did, I acquired those matters legitimately. Indeed, well, it's his right to say,
yes,
and the court will decide.
That's it.
But everybody is going to be watching out and hoping that the law will be served.
Yes.
This law and society will be served by it. We're going to have to leave it here, Malaki, because when we're having fun like this, enjoying the law, the interpretations of it, and the implications of it, time does fly.
In the same way, I'm curious, I'm going to find out your guys in this this business.
Thank you very much. Malaki Ugumadudea, former Secretary of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights,